My name is Emily Carter, and I've always loved Christmas. 8 years running, I transformed my apartment into a holiday wonderland. Twinkling lights, the scent of pine filling every corner, cinnamon candles flickering on the mantel. I baked cookies at midnight, wrapped gifts with precision, and somehow convinced myself that seeing my family's smiles was reward enough. But tonight, something shattered that illusion. I'm sitting by the window, the city lights reflecting on my polished hardwood floors, my favorite silk blouse brushing against my skin, when my phone buzzes. A notification. Heart skipping. I glance down and freeze. Just family this year. It's a picture of the table, perfectly set, with my parents and siblings all gathered, laughing. The empty chair that should have been mine glares back at me from the screen. 8 years. 8 Christmases I poured myself into this family's joy, and now nothing. Not a call, not a message, not a hint that I was missed. I feel the familiar sting of hurt, but underneath it, there's something steadier. Pride. A soft, bitter laugh escapes me. I've spent years hiding how much I gave, how much I sacrificed, and yet, here I am, still standing. Still Emily. Still whole. And for the first time, I notice the little things. The chill from the window, the warmth of my coffee cup, the soft hum of the city outside. I take a deep breath. Tonight, I will remember who I am. Tonight, I will decide what this means for me. I remember the first Christmas that stung like this one. I was 24, just out of college, and desperate to hold the family together. I had spent weeks planning, scrubbing the house until the floors gleamed, and even made Mom's favorite peppermint bark from scratch. I wanted everything to feel perfect, magical even, because in those moments, I thought love could be measured in cookies and decorations. But that night, my effort felt invisible. My brother, Jake, complained about the music, my mother barely looked up from her phone, and my father, well, he didn't say much at all. I had just pulled the last tray of roasted vegetables from the oven, hands red from the heat, when my mom looked over and said, almost offhandedly, "You always do too much, Em. Just let things be. Just let things be." Her words felt like a punch to the chest. I remember standing there, holding that steaming tray, the lump in my throat making it hard to breathe. My hands shook, not from the heat, but from the ache of not being seen. For the first time, I realized that my giving wasn't enough, not for them, not for this family that took my devotion for granted. Grandma's voice came to mind, soft but firm, like it always did. "Never forget your worth, Emily. One day, you'll find people who see it, and they'll treasure you." I had a small ornament in my hand, a tiny silver star she had given me years ago. I clutched it as if it were a lifeline, letting her words sink in. That night, I made a quiet decision. I would not stop loving my family, but I would stop bending myself into shapes they didn't appreciate. I would step into my own life, one where my effort, my heart, and my light were recognized. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew I would find a way. And so began the first step toward independence. One painful Christmas, one ignored compliment, one silver star at a time. After that painful Christmas, I decided to channel all the energy I had once poured into orchestrating everyone else's happiness into building my own life. I took a deep breath, dusted off my disappointment, and began carving out a space where I could shine without waiting for approval. The first step was small, taking on freelance projects, writing for local magazines, anything that reminded me I had a voice, a talent, and a mind of my own. It wasn't easy. The first months were filled with rejection emails, long nights staring at my laptop, questioning whether I was good enough. I remember one particular evening, curled up in my tiny apartment with a cup of cold coffee, thinking maybe I had misjudged myself. But then I found her, Clara Donovan, a seasoned editor who saw potential in me I hadn't yet recognized. She sent me a note after reading one of my essays. "Emily, you're not just competent. You're remarkable. Don't let anyone dim that light." Clara became my mentor, guiding me through the maze of deadlines, contracts, and client demands. She pushed me to take risks, pitch bigger stories, refine my voice, and trust my instincts. With every small win, a feature published here, a client pleased there, I began to see my worth reflected in tangible ways. I celebrated the first paycheck that felt like freedom, the first compliment that wasn't just polite, the first project that made me feel proud to call my own. During this time, I kept my life carefully curated for my family. Social media posts were generic snapshots, coffee on a desk, blurred city streets, vague captions about busy days. I didn't want them to see how far I'd come. I wasn't ready for recognition from people who had never noticed me before. There was power in secrecy, in quietly building a world they had underestimated. By my late 20s, I had established a small but thriving business, one that allowed me not only financial independence but also creative freedom. My apartment became my sanctuary, a mix of modern elegance and personal touches, hand-picked art, a shelf of books that had taught me resilience, and of course, my grandmother's silver star, still perched by the window, a reminder that even in the loneliest moments, I was never truly alone. I had learned to navigate challenges, to face self-doubt head-on, and to embrace the woman I was becoming. No one had handed me a path. I had built it, brick by brick, fueled by hurt, determination, and a refusal to be invisible. And through it all, a quiet joy grew within me, the kind of deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that your life, finally, belongs entirely to you. The knock at my door startled me, though I had been expecting them, at least in some sense. My parents and siblings were coming over, perhaps to check in, or perhaps out of habit. I hadn't sent an invitation. They had assumed, naturally, that I would be hosting Christmas, like always. I let the moment stretch, enjoying the quiet thrill of anticipation. When I opened the door, they stepped in, expecting the familiar. Emily, the diligent hostess, frazzled and flustered, juggling trays of food and forced cheer. Instead, they were met with calm. I was standing in my living room, which glowed softly under the warm light of modern chandeliers and holiday accents. My apartment was tastefully decorated, not kitschy, not overdone, but elegant, reflecting every achievement, every personal victory I had quietly built over the years. They noticed the art on the walls, hand-picked from small galleries I had invested in, the sleek, organized desk by the window where I worked late into the nights, the silver star still perched by the glass ornaments, catching the light. My parents' eyes flicked between one another, their mouths opening and closing like fish. My siblings froze, their smiles faltering. I let them take it all in. There was a pause, a moment suspended in disbelief. And then I spoke, calm, measured, and precise. I didn't host Christmas this year because I realized something. I've spent 8 years giving my energy, my time, my heart to traditions that you didn't notice, and I realized I needed to prioritize myself. Their expressions shifted, confusion giving way to dawning realization. I continued. Over the last few years, I've built my own business, established financial independence, and created a life that I'm proud of on my terms. I'm not the same girl who stood in the kitchen hoping for a thank you. I'm Emily Carter, and I own my success. I watched as the words settled in. My mother's eyes welled with tears. My father's jaw tightened, as if the truth was physically difficult to swallow. My brother, Jake, opened his mouth, then closed it, struck dumb by the magnitude of what they had ignored for so long. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and melancholy. It was a revelation, yes, but also a reminder of all the years I had spent invisible to them. I didn't tell you because it wasn't for you. I added softly, letting the statement land. I did it for me. Every late night, every challenge, every small victory, it was for the woman I wanted to become, not the daughter, not the sister, not the perpetual hostess. This is who I am now, and I am proud of it. The room was quiet. The only sound was the faint hum of the city outside, mingling with the soft chime of holiday lights. Slowly, recognition dawned on their faces. They weren't just stunned. They were confronted with the undeniable truth. The Emily they thought they knew had grown, thrived, and surpassed their expectations in every imaginable way. I felt a surge of empowerment, a deep, steady pride that had nothing to do with their approval. Finally, after years of feeling unseen, I was the one in control of the narrative. I had waited long enough. Now it was my moment to shine, not for them, but for me. After the initial shock wore off, I could see the unspoken questions forming in their eyes. They were still my family, but the balance had shifted. For years, I had been the one bending, accommodating, pouring my energy into traditions that went unnoticed. Now the power was mine, and I intended to use it wisely. "I'll celebrate with you," I said, letting my voice carry authority without anger. But things need to change, starting now. My father frowned slightly, uncertain, but I held his gaze. "I need honesty. No more dismissive comments. No more assuming I'll handle everything without acknowledgement. If we're going to share these moments, we do it as equals. Respect is non-negotiable." My mother bit her lip. "And what about me?" she asked, a hint of defensiveness in her voice. "You'll start by supporting me without criticism," I said gently but firmly. "That means no judgments on how I decorate, cook, or organize. You'll participate with gratitude, not expectation." Jake looked down at his shoes, the guilt obvious. "And me? You'll take responsibility," I told him. "If you want to be part of these celebrations, you'll contribute. Not just showing up, not just making small talk, but helping. Real effort counts." I noticed the subtle shift in their demeanor, tension mixed with understanding. For the first time, they weren't dictating the terms. I was. And it wasn't about control. It was about fairness, respect, and emotional growth. I took a breath and softened my tone slightly. "I want us to heal. I want our traditions to mean something, but that can only happen if we acknowledge the past and commit to doing better. If we can't, I will still celebrate my life, my accomplishments, and my happiness, alone or with people who value me." The room grew still. Their expressions carried the weight of reflection, and for a moment, I saw real change dawning, a mix of shame, realization, and hope. I wasn't punishing them. I was setting conditions for healthier relationships, for mutual respect. I was protecting the life I had built, the joy I had earned. And in that moment, I understood the truth I had been chasing all these years. Power wasn't about money, recognition, or even success. It was about setting boundaries, demanding respect, and refusing to shrink for anyone. By the time the conversation ended, I could feel a subtle relief in the air. My family wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the overlooked hostess. I was Emily Carter, independent, accomplished, and unapologetically in control of my life. The silver star from Grandma's collection glimmered softly in the corner of the room, a reminder that my worth had always existed, even when others failed to see it. And now, everyone else had no choice but to acknowledge it. In the weeks that followed, I watched subtle changes unfold. My parents called more often, not out of obligation but with genuine interest. My brother, Jake, offered to help with small projects around my apartment, not with criticism but with curiosity and effort. They were tentative, careful, but they were trying. And I let them, on my terms. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. Every Christmas I had spent exhausted, every dismissive remark I had swallowed, every ache of feeling unseen. It had all been a crucible. Those years had forged resilience, determination, and self-respect. I hadn't just survived being overlooked. I had transformed into someone my family and anyone could no longer ignore. The silver star from Grandma sat proudly on my mantel, catching the evening light. I traced my fingers over its smooth surface and remembered her words. "Never forget your worth, Emily. One day, you'll find people who see it." I had found those people, not because the world changed, but because I had changed. I had found me. That first Christmas after the confrontation was quiet, yet profoundly satisfying. I decorated the apartment with care, baked the cookies I loved, and poured my heart into the celebration. Not for approval, not for acknowledgement, but because I finally understood what it meant to create joy on my own terms. And when my family joined me, they did so with respect, gratitude, and the beginnings of understanding. I realized that traditions weren't just about gatherings or meals. They were about presence, intention, and connection. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of my independence and the joy it brought. I stood by the window that evening, sipping my hot chocolate, watching the city glow beneath the falling snow. The apartment smelled faintly of pine and cinnamon, the soft hum of lights blending with distant laughter. I felt complete, grounded, and unapologetically myself. And in that quiet moment, I whispered to the reflection in the glass, a simple truth that had taken years to embrace. I am enough. I always have been, and now I finally know it. Bottom of form.